Hey class, welcome to Blender. So in this first tutorial, I'm going to be explaining the absolute very basics of Blender and a little tiny bit about our default view and a little bit about navigation. All right, let's get started. So the very first time that you're opening Blender, you may have a slightly different screen that asks you to select some either default settings or regular settings. Just set it, keep it at default and continue. All of the other times that you open Blender, you will be first introduced to this splash screen. So in this screen, we have some options for our new files. And what's interesting about these new files is that they can create a file, but also it kind of sets up your workspace. So if you are doing something like VFX or video editing or even sculpting, these new files will set that up for you in a better way. So don't click on this, but let me just show you what I mean. So if I was going to do general, let's just say that this is our general setup. I'm going to go back to the splash screen. But if I was doing sculpting, you can see the interface changes quite a bit where I have my sculpting tools here and just a couple of tabs for interface up at the top. Now, as opposed to, I'm just going to do new and general. When you have a general workspace, you have a lot more options up here for your tabs. So I recommend in 99% of the times, let's just start with a general screen and go with that. One more thing about this initial splash screen is you can open a recent file or open or recover last session. There's also the donate button. This is a free open source software, but when you get to the point that you want to donate for its use, I recommend that. And then the last thing is, in order to get rid of the screen, you can either click on General or you can just click off of it, and that will get you the exact same file. Okay, so now that we're started here, we have our viewport, which is this big window here with our model in the middle. And it also has our X and Y axes. So this viewport screen is where we can look and see our general model. And it is in perspective view, which means that we can rotate around our model and look at it from all sides, look at it from below, etc. Now, the way that I'm doing that is with my middle mouse button. So with your middle mouse button, if you just click it, so hold down that scroll wheel and actually click and drag, you can rotate around. The other way you can rotate around your model is by using this little handy dandy tool over here. You can either click and drag to rotate gradually, or you can click individual letters, and that will bring you to your different orthographic views. So now what orthographic views are just our 90-degree flat views, such as top. Here's the top view. This is the right view with the X forward. And then with Y forward, this is actually with negative Y forward, this is our front view. So in general, if you're looking at our model, our X axis, which is this red axis, is moving across our model from left to right, and our Y is going forward and back. Now our Z is the up direction. This is different than in Maya, which is why I make such a big deal out of it when we learn Maya. Now, if I'm going to move, so I'm just going to use this little move tool, and I move to the right here. Notice that I'm moving in a positive direction, so this is 2, and then it would be 3, 4, etc. These values are in meters rather than centimeters if you were in Maya. If I move back on the axis, you'll see this number goes negative. So it starts at the origin at 0 and then works backwards, -1, -2, etc. Also, if I'm going for the Y direction, Let me grab that little arrow. Back is the positive numbers, whereas moving forward is a negative number that you can see over on the right here. And then finally, in the Z direction, I'm going to be moving positive numbers up in the Z direction. Let me just reset this. And then if I move this below the origin point, I would be moving towards a negative number. So just kind of be aware of that's how that works. Cool. All right, a couple more things about our viewport. So I can zoom in and zoom out using my scroll wheel in the middle. I can rotate around using that middle mouse button. And then if I want to move left and right, I'm going to hold down Shift and click my middle mouse button, and I can move my model left to right. If I ever need to if I get lost in space and I need to find my model again, so maybe you did something like this where you have no idea where you're at, you can always go to this View menu and do Frame Selected or Frame All. So Frame Selected will get us really close to our model, and then Frame All is a slightly further back view. But that is always a good fallback. There are some shortcuts for these, but they require the number pad to be active, and I just have a laptop. And we'll get to some of those things in a little bit. Okay, last thing I just want to talk about before I delete them is this camera. This is a default camera that comes in with your cube and a light in your scene. And you can see these over on the right-hand side in my scene collection. This is similar to the outliner in Maya. And so we can select objects here or by left-clicking them in our viewport. So remember, again, this viewport is this big window here. For this camera, if you actually click on this camera view on the right-hand side, you can see through that camera. So that can be very useful when we get to animation later. But for right now, we don't really need this camera, so we're going to delete it. Now, if you press delete or the backspace button on your keyboard, it's not going to do anything. You'll need instead to press the letter X. So I'm just hitting delete X and then deleting it. This little mouse here, it is called Screencast Keys, which is an add-on. So I'm just going to move that over and down so it's in a better position, and then hide this again. There we go. One other thing about moving around in Blender is that if I want to zoom in and out, there's also this magnifying glass on the right-hand side of my screen. So that will, if you click and drag, so click, hold down, and move your mouse up and down, that will allow you to zoom in and out. This little pan button is the hands. So this also lets you pan left and right. So that's the same thing as doing Shift and middle mouse button. And then we have that camera view. I just deleted the camera. And then this is perspective to orthographic view. And for the most part, I keep this on perspective. All right. So the last thing we want to do is delete this light because we don't really need it right now either. So remember, your shortcut to delete or your key to delete is X. And then you just say delete selected object. Yes. Cool. All right, so that's it for this very first video. Just a reminder, we talked about our viewports. We have our tools for rotating around in Maya, and that will become handy in our exercise later. We can zoom over here, pan over here, and then we can also frame selected. So go to view and frame selected if we want to zoom in on a object. And then finally, that middle mouse button, click, hold down, and drag your mouse left and right. Makes you rotate. All right, so I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, class.